Okay, it's a pleasure to have Ms. Forrester from the ARL. She received a Bachelor's of Science in Computer Information Science from Towson University. Then she did a graduate training at the White School here at Johns Hopkins, where her major concentration was in artificial intelligence and computer vision. And she's currently an operations research analyst in the Computational Information Science Directorate, Tactical Collaboration and Data Fusion branch of the ARL, where she works on projects dealing with real-time news analysis and social networks. Thank you.
Okay, I'm a little bit out of my area here, but you all have the expertise I'm looking for. I don't have. My project's a new start, so there's not a lot of work that's been done yet. But a while back, we were looking at the fact that the web is a non-traditional data source, and the Intel community has come to the lab and said that they're very interested in the more non-traditional data, and we thought what better place to start with just getting it right off the web. So the way this project actually began is Dana Aldrich had this project, and she had somebody that was wanting to scrape data off the web, and she asked me if I would be willing to take that data and visualize it in a program called Starlight. Now, Starlight's done at the Pacific Northwest Laboratories, and I've always wanted to work with it. I'm really a visual person, but I had been pulled off and was actually working with night vision scopes at the time, so the idea of coming back to computers was a plus. And so I said yes, but she could only fund me half-time. So I found another project using human data, and very interested in that, and I convinced him that the news data was human data and that he could really use this also. And he agreed, so he funded me 50%. So I am funded 100%, but that's basically all I get. So then one of the things I've learned in all the projects I've dealt with is I have to limit what I'm looking at. So I decided to look at the news focusing on terrorist and insurgency. And the reason for that were some of our partners. Dana Aldrich has a strong relationship with Morgan, and they're looking at identifying insurgents and that sort of thing. They went out and hand-scraped news articles to get their information, and this could be a boost to them to be able to do this automatically. Don Brown at University of Virginia is working on some work on identifying IEDs for us. And he is actually taking spot reports from the Intel officer and predicting where the most likely areas for IEDs will be. But he feels like the spot reports are too narrow, don't have enough information, and he would love to link each spot report to a news story because he feels he'll get more information that he could make his system more robust. So that was why I looked at those two. A contract fell into my lap that I'm just overseeing. I'm just a go-between, but I got money, a little bit of money off of it. But they were looking at the PMISI data, and so this is kind of, again, the non-traditional data, not what we get off of sensors and the more traditional information, but more of your social, your economic, that sort of thing. And then I have been linked with INSCOM and told that they're my customer. And I will actually be going down to INSCOM and training, being a shadow to the INSCOM analysts down there, looking at how they do their work so that I can focus work that we're doing to better meet their needs. Because so often when you have an analyst, they're so used to doing some things by paper and pencil. For example, when I talk to an analyst about anything automated about reading the news, they say, no, I have to read the news. I can't have a computer read the news for me. And I said, well, I agree, but can't we help you read the news? And he said, no, I have to read my news. Well, so now I'm going to be able to work at INSCOM, see how they're using the news, what they're doing with it, to see how I can better come up with tools that will help
Joan,
them.
before you go on, I don't understand some of these things, so. if you could-
Okay, let's see if that'll
Easy to
go
go
back.
back to your previous one.
Is that previous?
Yeah. So what is this B?
Okay, so-
I don't understand the distinction between some of these.
Okay, these are just major projects that we have. So the B3AN, the battlefield and below, she's looking at large systems, she's looking at integrating them. She has mainly congressional dollars. So she gets congressional dollars to look at things. Her big thing, I mean, she took me, she's the one that asked me to work on it. Right now, what she's really looking at, I mean, she goes off in all directions. But again, looking at systems that Brigade and Burload can use. Right now, it's an area that's looking at policy. So we have situations where UAV could be taking some data that a soldier needs, but if it gets higher classification, we can't get it down to the soldier. And how do we deal with that? Okay. The
Okay, by the way, when I say I want to know what the difference is, I want to know what kind of data you're talking about in each case. I don't need to know the policy.
Okay. Dana's looking at everything.
Okay,
And,
all data.
yeah, she really is. We are looking at, D6A is the Army's, universal system, basically. So it's going to end up being basically all the data in one database. And it's gonna have all different forms of data in it. And it's a,
You mean reports and video and?
everything. They are actually going out, the INSCOM community is actually going out and scraping stuff off the web and putting in it. So it has the INSCOM reports, yes. It will have all your sensor data in it. It has everything. It will be accessible through the D6A, and this is where we're gonna start trying to do some of our data fusion, which is what the staff is actually trying to do. We're trying to do more of the level 3 fusion, the organization. We aren't doing the tracks of the individuals. That's other groups that are feeding that to us. We are trying to take the data and look for organizational kinds of information. I have not even been out to see the simulation from the Joint Force Command. But they have a simulation, and that theirs is strictly simulation. They're looking at no real data, but they are looking at more of your irregular types of data, more of your social and that sort of thing. INSCOM is my customer, and again, I'm going to be looking. INSCOM's using the same data that the staff is using, so it's this large database with all kinds of data. But I am, again, just focusing for them on the news data right now. There's really all, these are 4 rather large programs that just all happen to link, and I'm funded by all of them and trying to sort of meet the mail with all of them, except the one at the bottom left is just there because it's there. Okay. So some of my long-term goals with this is for the STEF project, the one that was up on the right, is trying to form a relation discovery service. So that's the one that's trying to link information about organizations and that sort of thing. So he's doing data fusion, but he needs services up on his web. So I'm wanting the news to be actually a service and not just an application. So I want to actually have a data store with my news data that people can actually access it as a service. So that would be one of my long-term goals. I'm a long way from there. I'm looking at providing from the news, once I've got the news stories, I want to be able to provide actionable data. This is data that would be for the foot soldier, the actual soldier that's down the field that might have access to a computer. our soldiers need a lot of information about the local community, and I think the local newspapers would be a great way for him to find out more information about the local community. But then we also need to have things for the analyst. And so we need to have a store of data that he can go back and analyze the actual text. We also have researchers that are going to need this. So we have people doing data mining, we have people doing social networks, but they scream that they want different kinds of data. This will provide different data sources. In fact, some of my data right now is being used at Carnegie Mellon, one of the databases that I was pulling data off, and they're actually using it at Carnegie Mellon. Those are the three people I think would kind of use it. I think they would use the system very differently, but I'm kind of, as I look at the news and say, how can I use the news from the web, I'm looking at serving those three customers. I also want to be able to link to other databases. So I would like to be able to go out and link to a terrorist database. So if I have somebody's name in there, I could go out and get other information and link to and enrich the news information from other data sources.
Is a human being doing some of these things right now? So are there people in the army who do this
Yes.
actionable intelligence from news?
From the news. They actually, the analysts I talk to right now are telling me a computer cannot do it, he has to read it.
But it is the same.
Right, yes. So the analyst is actually reading the data. The soldiers are now trying to get information from the web that will help them in their rounds, help them better understand the community they're in. So they're out using the web to do that. It's one of the things that we really failed at when we went into Baghdad. So they are trying to get smarter on that. So this I think I've already done. So I have the scientists at the lab, whether they're doing social networking, whether they're doing data mining, whatever, that can use my data. We have the analysts that's needing historical data, needing current data, needing to look at it, the news and how the news relates to current operations. And then we have the soldier in the field that's needing something that might help them today and now. So
Right, so
one of the
what-
things, yes.
Yeah, so when you say that soldiers are now looking on the web to find out about the community that they're in,
Yeah.
do you mean that do you mean that every private is spending the evening on the web trying to read Arabic language newspapers? I don't understand what you
No, I
actually mean.
don't. I would think that they would, some of the communities have local papers. Some of the Arabic countries have papers in English. I think they're going there, but they're going other places on the web besides the news. But I think the newspapers could help them there. But they do have places back in the green zone where they can use computers, they can use the web. And so I feel that the information in the news would help them.
And this is all individual initiative. Is there sharing among soldiers of?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So there's people recommend articles to one another and so forth through the usual social mechanisms, but there's no support provided. There's no technological support provided for that, or for translation, or for browsing, or anything like that.
Not right now for the soldiers, no.
Okay.
And, again, I think with the work you all are doing, we also have a group at the lab at Adelphi, I'm actually at Aberdeen Proving Ground, that does work with natural language more. I mean, that is their specialty, is in doing the translations and stuff. That's just not me. So that would be one of the things. And as I look at the analysts saying the computer can't help them, but taking articles that have been translated from Arabic and compare how a story is being reported in an Arabic newspaper compared to how it's being reported in a, let's say, USA Today or something, looking for differences either in, is there misinformation in theirs, is there a different flavor, that sort of thing. I think that would be another way of using the news.
Is CENTCOM is DARPA's customer, right?
Mhm.
The Gale program customer?
I believe, yes.
can you compare what's being done at CENTCOM with this? They sound similar.
I just learned about what CENTCOM is doing. I know CENTCOM is using, from what I've heard from your folks, they're doing live feed, so they're using either radio or television, I believe.
But it's the
not
same sort of enterprise?
Same sort of, yes. There are other places, and I was not aware of the CENTCOM one. I am aware of one of the ones that DARPA is doing. So yes, there are other people doing it. It is just something that people are starting to look at, though, as it's not something that even at CENTCOM that I feel is really mature. So I definitely am going to go and look at theirs and talk to them and get out to them. One of the things when I first started with the lab, I was in the Human Factors and Engineering Directorate. And so I guess my roots are there. But people look at what I'm doing and they're saying, well, how's it any different than Google? What I really want this system to be able to do is I want the user to be able to identify what kind of news he wants. I want to be able to identify what he's wanting to do with it. Because if he's taking it to a visualization like a starlight, you may be doing something with it. If he's taking it more into a different kind of analytical system, he may want it in a different format. So if you have a group of tools, you might use and flow through different tools depending on what the user's needs are in the beginning, what he's looking for, but what his output is. I would really like to have some sort of user interface that would be easy for the soldier to identify what he needs, and then let him put a request out there and have agents out there looking for the news for him, feeding it back to him, where he doesn't have to every hour go and say, is there something new, that it works automatically. But I wanted to protect him from things like the Onion, so that if he does a search, I mean, some people go to the Onion and think it's a real news story. I would like this system to know that this is not a reliable source, or if it's an analyst that wants to go to the Onion, that we at least treat the Onion differently than we would treat CNN. So I'm looking at working with the Human Engineering Directorate, getting somebody there to help me come up with how do we identify what the soldier's really looking for in the first place and what he's going to do with it. And the commander at INSCOM has said one of the things he wants it to be able to do is to know the abilities of the soldier. So if the analyst has certain strong suits or negative suits, it wants it to process the data for his strengths. And so I'm going to have to bring, as I say, HRED in on that. So what have we done so far? The first person that tried this was not successful. So I came with some people and said, let's try it again. I want to go out and do a web crawl. And they said, oh no, why? Google does it so well. So we're using the Google API right now. I don't like the Google API. It puts restrictions on us that I don't like. But that's how I'm getting my data right now. But it is providing us with a good, right now what we're doing, we're going out, we're saying, we're putting parameters on it. We aren't pulling in all the data. So what I have, one of my data sets that's coming in is saying that if it's a IED, a roadside bomb, a car bomb, or a mortar in the news, I want to know it. This is a good data set for the social networking because it deals with a lot of different countries, but it deals with certain types of incidents that are out there. But where I'm wanting to go is to a web crawler, and I have somebody now, George Mason, that has done this and is pulling in all the data sets. So instead of where I talked about earlier, I wanted to be able to pull out the data that a soldier was interested in. With the web crawler, I'll be able to pull in all the news and look for trends within the news. And this will give me the capability of being a service for the other systems out there. So by this, I'll be on our supercomputers with a large data set coming in of, I think she collects 20 stories 5 times a day off the web of the latest news stories. So she's looking at one news site, I'm looking at taking it out and taking it to many news sites and having it come in from a lot of different sites then, because I don't want to use just one news source. So once I have the news, and that's where I am right now, as far as what I'm doing, I am getting the news. And there's a lot more to getting the news than meets the eye, because when you look at a web page, the news story is just a very small portion of what's out on the web, and we have to go in and actually scrape just the news off. And there's software out there that you can train to do that. What we're trying to do is write heuristics so that no matter which news story or news page we go to, we can scrape it without having to train it. So we're building a set of heuristics to do this scraping, and you have to then remove duplicate stories and that sort of stuff that all has to be done. And then I'm wanting to do some tagging on it through something like a thing finder that will do my identity tagging. I'm wanting to put it out in XML format and also in text format, because some of the systems that I'd like to feed this to, some require XML, some require text.
News means only text, it doesn't mean figures and.
We are not trying to capture the pictures right now. If we can get a good scrape on the text, figuring out which one of the pictures on the web page goes to the news story would be harder. I mean, it's something we may try. Right now, we're just trying to scrape the text.
Thank you.
And for the project with Carnegie Mellon for the social networking, they really only want the text, so we stopped there.
And this thing finder, does it work in multiple languages or does it work just with English?
No, the thing finder does work in multiple languages. It has 13 languages, I think, that it does work in. And my understanding, I have it embedded in another system that I have to go through that system to get to it. I don't have it out as a standalone. But my understanding is that it does the tagging before it does the translation, and then it will translate it to English. So your tags are not affected by the translation. So I thought that was, they may all do that, but I thought that was good. So this is a slide I can't talk to at all because this is you all. So my idea is, once I have this text, how could an analyst use the news? So some ideas. If you look at a news story from yesterday and you look at a news story from today, so a new news story comes in, but it's the same story. The first part of that news story is all going to be rehashed from the day before. So when an analyst reads this, if it came up and it highlighted what was already in yesterday's news, so he knew he didn't have to read that, he only had to read the part that was new information. That's one sort of thing. The ability to be able to correlate the news stories to the spot reports. To know if there are stories out there that are not being reported in the intel officers' reports, so that he could then go and say, is this something that we missed, or is this misinformation being put in the news that is being just propaganda that is out there and they're using the news as a tool sort of thing. I'm looking for other ideas of ways, obviously clustering and coming up with key stories. There are a lot of things that Starlight, that's one of the things it does rather well. But I am looking for different ways, different kinds of things that we could do with the news. The idea, that we were talking about earlier, the idea of being able to say this person did this action. And so you have this person-action relationship and have that to the story, so when we mind it. That to me would be something that might also be interesting. So right now I'm going around, I've talked to the folks at ARL that do natural language. I'm talking to anybody I can find that might come up with ways that we can do this. Also, the idea of me talking to the intel officer once I get on site and doing that. I'll have a better idea of what he's looking for in the news. When he reads the newspaper, what's he trying to find? So my last one is analyze and visualize. So this is, so I'm looking for, this is kind of my love, is visualization. So up at the top here, this is actually a starlight, and this is taking some of Don Brown's data and actually showing links between different layers, and this is all the data down here, and you're color-coded with whether it was killed or injured, that sort of thing, and the kind of explosion it was, and they get linked together. Real hard to see in two-dimensional. If you spin it, it becomes a lot easier. This is something that I saw from Stony Brook University, and they have a web crawler out there that crawls all U.S. web pages, news web pages in the U.S. And they're doing this particular one, they're looking at how many newspaper stories there are that mention chaining. And so you see you have a large area here and a large area over there interested in chaining. The middle of the country really doesn't care.
Does the middle of the country just have fewer newspapers, or is it, is this correcting for that?
I don't know that. That's a good point.
Or the location of the stories, or the places where papers said that he was. So the sort of
No,
exterior-
they're looking at each paper and they're looking for the number of words. They're looking for, and they do take out duplicate stories so that if, I guess if it was, they do know, so if you have, when they start doing some of their analytical work, I know that when the same story appears in 50 different newspapers and it's exactly the same because it's an AP story, that I know they've taken care of that.
So this is just answering the question, who's talking about change?
Right, which is not
And
meaningful.
if there are more people,
But
more
the
people.
idea is that the visualization might be a good visualization if I could use it a different way. So I like the fact that they do crawl like 300 newspapers, I believe it is, every day and analyze the data. So they are doing the so what in the news. They aren't really looking for trend analysis. They're doing more of a word count. They're looking for the number of articles, the length of the articles, the level of the vocabulary in the articles. They're, something that, okay, so what they're doing doesn't appeal to me per se, but their visualization does. The same thing with the UK one. She's looking at a lot of different social data. And what she's looking at here, now, if you look at that, do you see the world map? Can you tell that that's kind of what it is? And if you know that's what you're looking at, and she usually does have a map of the world down there with the same color coding. So you have that to go on. This is looking at the outbreak of AIDS. So Africa has the largest outbreak. If you go over to the Americas, they don't have as much of a new outbreak of AIDS. Again, perhaps in the military, not what I'm interested in, but I like the visualization. I think that you can look at that and say, wow, what's going on with Africa? You look at it, you see the world there. So I'm looking for different kinds of visualization. I'm going to be working with the Air Force on visualizing social networks, coming up with different ways of looking at social networks. So with so much data, how do we show it to the soldier in the least amount of time with the most amount of information and get the message across. So that's kind of the third step in this.
So let me ask you a question. So when you show these examples, are you implying that there are things that a soldier needs to see which could be best shown to him or her in this way?
Right, that's what I'm looking for, what is the best way to show different kinds of data to the soldiers. So,
what kind of data would you want to show, for example, in that map?
okay, if an analyst, you could be looking at your trend analysis of the news of where you are seeing certain kinds of events across the world. And one of the things when my stories were coming in, I had a student was looking at the stories as they came in to proof them and stuff. And he said, you know, all IEDs aren't happening in Baghdad. You know, there are a bunch of them happening in India right now, in the news. And, you know, he was, so something like this, it was looking at certain trends in the news. You could look at it it could be taking the news and it could just be something you looked at each day and you could see the color shifts and changes or compare. So that's sort of, and both of them were sort of doing that. As I say, they were both at a conference I was at and just seemed to be different too. So I am looking for anything. The one on the top is out of the software Starlight. Now Starlight gets, I'm not going to say it's a bum rap. It's a hard piece of software to use. I like it, but it's called the PhD software because they only pull it at, all the analysts can't use it. Only about 10% of the analysts can even use Starlight. But Starlight comes out when the data set gets too big for the other projects, and they have to bring Starlight in. So one of the things I would like to be able to do, because they do bring a lot of text type of information into Starlight, but so one of the things I'd like to be able to do is process the text ahead of time before Starlight to make Starlight an easier lift for the analyst. So again, if I can identify what the analyst wants to do with this in Starlight, can I process the data ahead of time for him so that when it gets to Starlight, he has to do fewer filters and do less with it? So, but that's just one of the tools that the analyst does use. So I'm going to give you just a real quick, this is what we're doing, review. So right now I'm trying to grab the news, and that's what I'm currently working on. And I'm just trying to grab strictly text off the web. My next challenge, once I have my database, is really building and going in an automated fashion. Right now they aren't totally automated. Right now there's still a man in the loop for some of it. Once I have that totally automated, I'm going to go full time trying to figure out how do I parse, or what can I do with the data? How can I help an analyst with the data that I have now that I've got current news, and it's streaming in, so it's coming in at different times in the day, so we don't just have yesterday's news. We have news from an hour ago coming in. So yeah, and this is an area that I know nothing about, and am looking for creative ways. So I'm trying to be a go-between between the scientists that are working with text data and the analyst that doesn't think a computer can do anything, and figuring out ways that we can help our analysts work with the data. I want to be able to enrich the news data, whether I'm using the university's MindSwap database that they have, where they actually have a terrorist specialist entering data every day, so it is current new data. And we'll be doing this through using an ontology. So I want to be able to link to that one, if not others. I need to be able to, social networking is one of the things my group is doing. It's a new area, and that I think we can help the Army understand the communities they're going into, because sometimes when they go into a town, one person may be the mayor, but he's not the person of power. So how do you really know who's the person of power, and maybe news articles from that local newspaper could identify people of power within the community other than the ones that we get on the piece of paper. That would really help our soldiers a lot when they hit the ground, to know who to talk to and who they're wasting their time on. And then I want to be able to visualize it in a way that is meaningful. And the visualizing, I'm visualizing both the news and the text, as well as relationships between the news and the intel officers' data, and trying to put it into social networking and visualizing that. We're trying to do all of those. So that's what I'm doing in a nutshell. And I would love ideas of things that you think could be done. They're feasible. Yes?
So you on your first slide, you had a sort of a general feedback, and maybe this isn't what was meant by that, but the question is, people, soldiers in the field, analysts in the field or here, may be in a position to confirm or refute certain stories in the news.
Right.
So could those be fed back into the system to try and look for features of news stories that make them reliable or not? Or just the fact that, you went out and confirmed something, that's another fact.
Right, yes.
In your database.
That's
And
definitely
could
it.
this be used to combat, as you say, news is a weapon, so,
That's one of the ones I think will be-
Plant things in the news, can you, model that
Right.
with these kinds of, features of reliability or otherwise?
Yeah. And being able to put a trust value on a news story is important also. I mean,
Right, not just the source, but what are specific facts in
Right.
this story that tell you that it's
yeah. Either because you've compared it to other news stories that are out there, and this one, lines up pretty well with them, or that this one doesn't. So if it doesn't line up, is it not lining up because it has more information? Or is it not lining up before because it's misinformation?
and they may know within hours, which
Yeah.
the right answer is.
And again, my son looks at this and he says, "Mom, anything in the newspaper, the intel officer should know." But in reality, that's not the case. But also, in taking the information from the news into social networking and looking at comparisons and links and stuff within the news, this is something that an intel officer could miss, that we could maybe help him with on the computer side. Finding the links between people and other stories that they may not make the links and associations. Yes?
So I would have thought that one of your big goals would be helping people figure out what to read, and in fact you did that filtering
Yeah.
as a bullet point on a couple of the slides. But I was sort of struck by your colleague who said, I have to read the newspaper, as if he or she was able to read everything.
Right.
How do people actually make the decision now of what to read?
Yeah. He will, he says that that's what he does as an analyst,
Uh-huh.
and that's his job. And so, that's just, he puts it down there that that's, I'm sure he's using a Google browser to get his stories.
Uh-huh.
But again, I think we can really help by identifying certain types of information in the story, whether we're pointing out where the action items are or whatever. Again, I think it would depend on what his function, what he was looking to do with the data as to, so he puts in his sort of, this is who I am and what I'm looking for, and kind of you get to know that analyst, and based on that, you highlight certain things within a story. But the other thing is that he doesn't know. I mean, if he's reading stories, there may be 300 stories out there on the same topic. But, so he may read one story, but he may miss something else. So even if he wants to read one story, if we can say, well, by looking at all these stories, this is information that's not in that story, would help him. Because no, right now, he is reading the stories.
But they're really good, Jason. I mean, they're smart people who work really hard and have a lot of experience. And so
But they must have the same information overload problem as the rest of us.
Oh.
they do, but one of the problems is that it's a sensitivity specificity trade-off, right? And they don't very often read much that's useless. They miss some things that they might have wanted to read,
Yeah.
but they don't read much that's useless. And so if you automate it for them, it doesn't take much wrong stuff
Before they
sent
waste
to
their
them
time.
before they say, I don't, if I don't use your stupid machine, I don't read this useless stuff.
Uh-huh.
So, you can help them on one end, but they're really good at the other end, at the other end of the curve.
But the other thing is that you can do it, and this is something that they did want help with, was the fact that, okay, the story is there, they're gonna put that into the database. And I know there are automated systems working on doing this, but they really do fat finger some of the information that they think is key in there. So if we can automate just taking a news story and in an efficient way, getting the right kind of data out to be put in key in the database.
What do the databases look like?
I am getting to Intel in 2 weeks to see how they actually store their data. I know that their data is not uniform in how it's stored, is all I can tell you. I really have not seen it yet.
So the picture you're portraying is essentially that of a user with a profile. So there's somebody who's interested in certain kinds of things. I don't know about various, I don't know, civil disturbances in the area that I'm supposed to control. So anything where there's a fire or whether there's a riot or whether there's something else, tell me about it.
Most of your Intel officers are given certain assignments, something has come in, and
Right.
they are focused in a certain area. Yeah.
So let me ask you a question about that then. So the first question is, how specific is this? Am I interested in only IEDs in my Baghdad area, or am I interested in any kind of
Ask me in 2 weeks after I spend a week with an Intel officer.
Okay.
Right now, I've briefed some Intel officers, and I've been in training classes with Intel officers, and I quiz them. Being with the Intel community is new to me.
Okay.
I've been with logistics, I've been with the warfighter, and I've been with special operations. I've never been with the Intel community.
So in case of the warfighter, how do they also use information the same way? Do they also have profiles, or they don't?
They're totally different in what they want and how they use it.
And what could you just tell me say more about it?
Well, your warfighter just has, he's focused on a mission, a very small area,
Okay.
where your analyst is looking at a much larger area, more data.
Okay.
So your warfighter, but your warfighter is not doing the analytical work. He's taking what the analyst gives him, and he's putting it into action.
Okay.
So, and I did logistics first, which was again more of your analytical type of work.
Right.
But again, when I went to them, they said that it was a paper and pencil effort, that a computer couldn't help them. And so when I asked them to show me what they did, came back, did a small system, took it to them, and they said, oh, yeah, you can do that. Why? Let's do this now. We said, well, we don't do that. Well, why not? If you have the data to do this, you can do that. Well, of course. So then we got this, until you can get them, showing them how it can be used for them. Then it was a matter of growing it to something they can use. So once we can put something in their hands, then it grows to their needs. But we first of all have to be able to say, I see what you're doing, and that's why they're putting me down there for a week, because I'm that link between science and the analyst, and see what you're doing to see how we can make a system that when we bring it to him, he won't laugh at it.
And another related question is this information need. Let's just call it an information profile. I want to know about these things. How long-standing is it? Do I get a new one every 3 hours? Do I get one every 3 months?
I think that on this system that you would put basically a request in that would start basically an agent running until you stopped it. And you could, if your focus changed or you wanted to change your profile, you would just go in and change it. If you want to broaden it or narrow it or completely wipe it out. Colonel Hill is wanting us to actually be able to, and this is going to be another H-read one a lot, be actually able to watch analysts do their job and be able to say, well, this is a left brain person versus a right brain person, therefore these tools are the tools he's going to levitate towards. Well, if these tools are what he's looking at, and this problem comes in that really needs a tool over here, he wants the system to say you're missing something, you need to go somewhere else, you haven't looked at the right spot. So the commander at Intel is very interested in that kind of work.
And these are INSCOM analysts you're thinking about when you say.
That's who INSCOM and Fort Huachuca will be, but INSCOM is my main customer. We have other folks working with Fort Huachuca. Yes?
So one of the classic problems in this area when you have a job being done, a cognitive job being done by humans, and you try to enhance it or substitute or add technology, is how you evaluate when you've added value.
Right.
You know, there are time to completion, performance, there are all kinds of ways of trying to measure that, and when they stood the Gale program up, they had a huge controversy about how to do the evaluation. Do you have any idea of what kind of an evaluation scheme will be set up to show that you're actually about to add value to the job?
Not right now. Right now, the only thing I'm analyzing is how good the scraper is, because I compare it against hand scrape versus computer scrape. So, you know, we're getting better there.
But how good is scraper is it exploitation task dependent, depends on what you're using.
Anytime you have humans in the loop who think they're doing a great job and who are not sure that technology could do it any better, you really have to be very careful how you set up an evaluation scheme and get buy-in from the people who own the humans.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
We
you
found that with the first
be a
one we did
constantly
this summer,
receding target.
because we had 4 different people doing the scraping,
Yeah.
and we found out that the 4 different people all scrape differently. So our next test, we have students coming in over the summer. We're going to give one student the task, so one person's doing it. We definitely had problems with 4. Yes?
I'm still surprised at this preference for very high precision over high coverage. You would think that the cost of missing things would be much greater than the cost of having to skip something that's not relevant. That should take milliseconds of scanning the article.
Right.
Did they explain this, or they just assert this is how we do things and I don't want to waste my time?
He says that he can't trust a computer unless he's read it. I mean, he was very dogmatic. Unless I've read it, it's not important. You know, he said, I have.
Well, that's
to
fine,
read
but
it.
nobody's saying he shouldn't read it. The
Right.
question is whether the computer should be recommending stuff to him.
Right, yeah.
I think, again, this is a classic problem where sometimes the people at the point of contact think precision's the problem, and their managers think that recall is the problem, and actually, both have to be taken into consideration before you can judge the technology.
In reality, I think it's back to my logistics situation. I think it's a matter of the Intel analyst doesn't realize how a computer could help him. So he can't suggest, I would like a computer to do this. So by watching how he does his job, and I'll be looking at things other than news, but news will be one of the things I'm looking at. But looking at how he does his job, I will then have to decide how I can make a tool that will be something when I show him that might appeal to him. I've got to look at what he's doing and what he's looking for so that I can fashion a tool for him.
But also, computers are very good at looking at what humans do. They can model the kinds of articles that human clicks on, given the stream they see, and those they ignore. And we know how to model that behavior.
Yeah.
More like this is a phenomenon that's very easy to replicate. If they want more articles in depth on a particular topic, you can have real-time queries generated from the articles, let alone the keywords, the profiles. And that can change on a minute-to-minute basis depending on what goes of current interest to them.
Right.
Or maybe they want the converse. Maybe they want to see things that are not like what they saw before. You get more diversity. Again, we can model that. Perhaps also, if we could show them why an article is chosen, highlight a couple passages or some keywords that brought this to the view of computers first of all.
Yeah, I think highlighting the article, again, I think if he's looking for something in particular, I'm thinking highlighting certain things in the article, you know, whether it be the people's names, just so he doesn't have to search on them, he gets those quickly, whatever, or the action items, whatever. Again, it depends on his task that he has, which I hope I can capture in his profile, as to what would be most important to highlight for him. But yes, I think highlighting the news articles so that if he's looking at a certain article, we maybe even suggest one that the other ones are there, but have that article highlighted for him to show him what is the new news, what has he probably not seen before, as well as the points of interest. So if he put in certain kinds of words, if he was interested in economic data. So just areas in the article dealing with economics would be my thoughts.
One high-level comment I would have, following up on several things that have been said, is at some point it would be good to find out how Gale is doing this and do it differently.
Right.
Because there's so much similarity in the goals that it would be a shame to duplicate it, because a lot of things that Gale can't do because it's chosen to do it one way. And the thing I'm thinking about most is their evaluation scheme, which puts an analyst in the loop and does experiments in which the analysts do their jobs in a certain way and measurements are made of the effectiveness of the technology. It would be really nice to have some other paradigm exercise if you're going to do the same kind of information extraction from the same type of material and media. It would be really a good thing to try some other paradigm.
Right, okay. Yes.
So during your talk, I was thinking that most of the capabilities that you think might, at least that we think at least vaguely might help analysts, would probably help other people as well. And so eventually, some of these capabilities may end up in Google in one form or another. What I'm curious about is what things do you think are needed that'll be the last to show up at Google, that are important for people in the military that aren't sort of more general interest?
I have to give that one some thought. I'm not so
And
sure.
is it tracking a
I
single
even
topic over time? or-
understand what I'm going to be able to do with text analysis well enough to be able to answer that.
And there's a sense in which a lot of your talk was sort of motherhood and apple pie. You know, we would all like an interface that told us what to read and helped us read it and keep track of it and pointed us to other stuff that we thought might be relevant and took other people's clicks into account and our own
In
clicks
fact,
and figuring out what we might want to read.
I think Google does
and
track the
indexing
news
and drawing
stories I
maps and
look at.
visualization. Sorry.
Keep certain ones. Google is looking at the news stories I look at and feeding me stories that are like what I looked at.
Yes, it does do that.
I'll bet you one thing is the languages in which Google's interested in which the Army's interested wouldn't be the same. I bet that's an area in which the Intel product
You
would
mean we're
have.
not going to invade an English-speaking country?
It's not part of it. I mean,
That's just a
maybe this
guess.
isn't the place to talk about Google as a company, but I think they're actually pretty interested in.
That's just a guess, though. Google's going to follow a commercial paradigm. You don't follow a
Yeah,
commercial
no, you're
paradigm,
right.
you won't get where you want to go in the
You're
Intel
right.
paradigm.
That's true.
One thing I would think is that the sources that Google would focus on would be different from the sources that the Army might focus on. That might be the biggest difference.
The other thing I see is what we do with the language part of the news would be useful in other areas, whether it's looking at spot reports or travel reports or whatever. I think that the tools that we're looking at do have multiple uses.
You've been focusing in your talk on news data.
And news data is what I am focusing on here, but I am always the one looking at the larger picture and what, I mean, that's how I got from Starlight to this project, is that I didn't have any data, so I started thinking about what we could do with news data.
But are there kinds of data that that might be special to your situation
Logs.
that people might want to browse and visualize and stuff?
Logs.
Logs? What's a
Very
log?
Definitely.
Blogs.
Logs, yeah. Yeah. Again, looking for being able to tell if the level of unrest is going up or down in a certain area to make one that you want.
I'm surprised that in this data it's not a high priority.
again, because we were trying to do this heuristic type of search, scraping, we didn't, and the two people we were working with said they weren't interested in it, so I put it off and didn't do it. But again, that is something I would think that instead of maybe pulling it from there, there's probably other data sources that I could link to that would have the images, instead of trying to take my time and pulling it off of there. So when I link to the terrorist database or some other kind of database that I might have access to, that would have images.
Okay, let's thank the speaker.
I did put business cards on the back if anybody wants to get in touch with me.